Oh, you want to build like a pro. As a game dev of over 13 years, here are 5 tips to help you start building like a pro in any survival game. We're going to be using Valheim today, as I've recently gotten back into this game and been having a lot of fun live streaming a bunch of really fun builds lately. So if you're into that sort of thing, come check me out on Twitch. I'll put a link in the description below. But let's start off with tip number 1. Have a plan. Now, I know that might seem like a little bit of a cop out, but it's really important because, for example, in Valheim, you have chests. Maybe you want to have a storage room. Think about how many chests you need to have, so you know how wide your building needs to be. So in this particular case, our plan will be to break it down a couple different wall builds and things like that while applying the rest of the 4 tips. Which brings me to tip number 2, add trim. Trim is really important. Um, it can change your build from looking just normal to um, a lot more realistic. So it's as simple as just knowing where to place some boards. Um, it's adding these pillars here. So if you look on the edges here, there's a big difference between a wall like this and a wall like this, right? It's just this small little bit of depth that it adds, a little bit of breaking from the repetitive lines that you're going to see in the wood. Adding trim can be a big game changer once you start working on larger houses, adding more depth and things like that. And trim can be used on all sorts of things, right? So let's take a look at, stone. So when layering stone, if you have pieces like this, it's always good to, again, cover up your bad lines with some trim. This is a very simple example, but it adds a meaning to where this line is, and it doesn't just look like stone stacked on top of each other anymore. It looks a lot more intentional and a lot more believable. If we were to build a window, we'll just do a very simple window for now. I'm going to add your trim. This on top as well. Again, with the window, you're going to add trim. See how it just adds that extra layer of depth? Now, if you have, you know, uh, your wood shutters unlocked, you can add those in too. Oops. And this will add just a little bit more detail to the build. And see, now we are already looking a lot better versus what you might see without the trim. Let's see, would be a pretty big difference. Now, on to tip number 3. We're going to add depth. And depth is really important because nothing we actually see in the real world is just a flat surface like this. Um, what you're normally going to have is multiple layers of depth on any wall, even your tables and stuff. If that's clutter or whatever that's on it, there's always some depth to what we're seeing. Spacious window on a design by Bearer of Curses, which I'll touch a little more on later. We do have to do a couple little tricks here, and one of the easiest ones is to just kind of zoom in here, and you want to place your block. I'm aiming it to perfectly line up with the one behind it. Now, this enables you to be perfectly in line with the other wall, um, which allows you to start kind of adding a little bit more um, interesting shapes into your walls. So you can do this with, all kinds of um, different shapes. You can start playing around with different looks and designs. So let's take a look at what I mean by that. Let's start off with, again, we're just going to do a simple, maybe a 3x3 wall here. Starting out with a little bit of trim just to kind of outline where I want to place my box. Okay. Get some more walls in. And actually, we'll do a window, just like we had before. So, sort of what we had before we are going to make it more intricate is something along the lines of this. Now, again, we do have other pieces, um, which we can use um, in order to add a little bit more interesting contrast. But for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to use mostly the base stuff. And then I'll show you what you can do with more pieces later. But for example, let's use the same thing we talked about before. We're going to zoom in and add that just on top of the other one. And we will finish lining this out. So, okay. Now we can grab some 1 meters. Maybe we'll do here and here. Add our roof piece. Always play with your snapping too to kind of see how you can place these on. Now, when you place a roof like this, it is going to come through this side. So you also want to do something on the inside of your house, which we can do here in a second as well. Now, there's a ton of things we can do here. One thing that I like to do is grab a wood beam and snap it here, just the 1 meter, because it barely comes out like this. Now you'll use this one piece and you'll get that to snap right on top of it. Now the reason I do that is because I don't want a ton of space. I want just a little bit of space, not a massive gap outside of this window. Because it's just here to, again, add a little bit of depth, add a little bit of realism to the build. Now you can add these if you like. And I do tend to add a bit of a front piece like this, but not normally with these walls. I usually do it with something a little bit later. So for now, we're going to leave it like this, but we will change something about this here in a little while. But I'm going to leave this little cutout in there. Now, another thing you can do is we'll just use like a torch, I guess. Just put it there for now, just to have light. Okay, so let's start adding a little bit more onto this window to give it just a little bit more design. And again, this is all just thinking about adding depth to our build. And we will do 45s just to give it a bit of a diamond shape. Yeah, that's not too bad. Okay. Maybe we'll give it a little shelf out under the window, maybe for some pots or flowers or something. And now we'll add our shutters. Pretty good. Okay, so now on the inside, make our window area just a little bit better. We're going to line that up perfectly with that one, just like we did in the front of the house, which allows us to create an inside windowsill. Maybe we'll add some curtains, because you can get these fairly early on. So we'll add these just as far to the side as we can go. Right there. It's a little off center, but that's okay. It gives the purpose for what we're looking for here. Now, if you are into mods, the only mod that I really use, and I think is a great one for building, is called Plant Everything by Advise. So all it does is it allows you to plant like all of the bushes, which allows you to kind of, you know, put some stuff on the ground. And that pulls the house out even a little bit further. So now we have a ton of depth inside of this wall. And you can see that depth alone just kind of really changed this wall from just a flat idea to something that maybe you would see in real life. Now, let's talk about blending edges for tip number 4. Now, blending our edges, I've kind of done this just by habit right away, but you don't want your ground to be like a sharp cutoff anywhere really, but we'll use just the ground of your house outside as an example, because this is where you're going to see it the most. Now, one thing that helps a ton, again, is trim, right? So that's already kind of breaking up that harsh look, that change to the ground. Like we don't see that in real life, right? So already having trim helps with that. A couple other things that you can do, even though you need to have your stuff protected, you can place barrels. Again, I used the cultivator and this mod, but without this mod, you still have, you can use like saplings, or, you can have a little garden of your own, like grow some carrots, things like that, because it breaks up the eyes from staring at, just a flat cutoff on the ground. Another thing that you could use is your wood stacks, stone stacks, things like that. Things that pull your eye away from seeing such a harsh edge. You could even go as simple as, if you get a hoe, you can place clusters of rocks individually like that, or you could create an actual stone pile. There's pretty much uh, a ton of things that you can use, um, just to kind of break up the bottom of the house there. Um, and this also sort of applies to inside your house as well. So you're not going to really have just a bare wall. You want to think about, what does your house look like inside when you're looking around? Right? Normally, the things that we tend to place up towards walls. So, any crafting tables, getting those close to walls. Your furniture designs should be, um, obviously in an accessible place, but these things are generally somewhat close to walls. Um, in our real life, and that actually helps with breaking up that harsh edge. Now, there's going to be places where you do have, just the flat area, and that's completely fine. Especially in the case of this window, because your eyes are more drawn to here anyway. You don't really care about what's down here, right? Um, Now, this actually brings me to a really cool example of something that I saw from Error of Curses. I'll put a link to him in the description as well because he makes a lot of really cool stuff in Valheim. So if you are here specifically because of Valheim, definitely go check him out. He's very awesome at building. Um, but what he did was he took some 1 meter walls or these quarter walls like this. And then he added a bit like that. And what I find interesting about this is I think he was using this as just sort of a way to give even more depth to his builds. Um, in which you could keep the wall coming out this side. And it adds even more depth to the build. But something that I really like about this is that you can actually, um, if necessary, if you don't want to see certain like extra structural pillars, you can actually have these inside there. And he didn't really use this, and it might be, you know, because most of your structural stability will come from here anyway. But if you do need extra height and need iron and you don't like the look of it, um, it can be hidden inside your wall. So I've been thinking about implementing something like this in a build as well. Now, again, we after blending your edges, um, this kind of falls under a a bit of a tricky one. Just don't go too overboard. It's okay to see some of your house. You don't have to think that no walls can exist. Like this right here. This is fine. It's just that you don't want a really long monotonous line of harsh cutting to the ground, right? Especially if there's like grass out here too, like that's also helping. Um, but it's just something to keep in mind and um, play around with different things. Um, Now, the final tip is to decorate. When you have stuff inside, you know, don't just have like a table and, some kind of a chair or something, right? Like that's fine. But, look at all of your design options and think about how they can be used, right? Like this is a carpet, but I mean, you can put it on the table and now you have a tablecloth, right? You also have handles, right? You can place one, rotate, place another, rotate, place another. Now you got a little cluster of candles on the table. Um, there's tons of stuff that you can use, or the pot outside. Now, this is a late game thing, but, just think about with the tools that you have, what can you place around to just add a little bit of an interesting look. That they added the serving tray, so you can place pretty much any consumable item down as well. So you can place little potions on the table, things like that. Um, and decorating it really, really, really changes the look inside your home from just walking in and seeing a bunch of crafting benches and random objects to something that feels a little bit more realistic. And it can really change uh, the look of your house. right? You could consider some of the blending that we did to be, decorating as well, even like with the curtains. And it really adds some color, it adds some variance, so you don't just have a really bland color of just brown everywhere, right? So uh, take a look at a couple different builds that maybe other people have done, which just kind of brings me to like a tip like 6-ish. But like this would really fall more under tip 1 of have a plan is, you can also get some references, right? Get some references and um, try and look at what real architects do or what other people do in the game and, play around with some of the designs. You don't have to do exactly, what's done here. You can make it your own. You can do so many different things, come up with so many different designs just by playing with the different shapes. Um, Now, I did say that we would look at what you could do with maybe some of the later game building stuff. So let's take a look at that now. Pretty darn good looking with the little pieces out here. Glad I seen that from him. It's really nice. But as you can see, it really starts to add up, and we'll take a look at how each one of these things have been applied, right? So we had a plan, right? And our plan was originally to change this wall into something a little bit more um, unique with all of the new pieces. Um, we added trim, so we've got all these different types of trim everywhere. Really outlines the building in a nice way. And then we added depth, right? So we have so many layers of depth in this wall. It's not just one entirely flat wall, right? Um, we added a little bit of blending on the edges by adding some plants and this like little planter area. And we don't really have any like super flat annoying spot. That big open area, I did end up placing something there just to kind of break the eyes away from a super flattened area. And you could also decorate, right? So we decorated with some plants, we got some lantern, and again, this sort of like picture thing. And this is applying just those five simple things. Now, when you're building your full house, just keep that in mind as you're going through each one of your walls. And this applies, it doesn't have to be this shape, it doesn't have to be this design. There's a million things you can do. Just have fun with it. That's the main thing. Just start placing different shapes, feel how they look, and enjoy the process. But yeah, those are my 5 tips. If you want to see me build stuff in other games using the same tips, just let me know, and I'd be happy to hop into any survival game. They're probably my favorites, so um, let me know in the comments too if maybe you think that something could have been done better, or if I missed something, or even if there's a couple really cool mods that people could use to help them in their building journey as well, and maybe I'll check them out too so I can play them. And if you do build something cool using these tips, feel free to hop in the Discord and share them. I'd love to see what you guys do. But until next time, guys, peace.